To the right, Governor.
Usually the
You're
right.
on stage right. Exactly. So I'd like to think I am interviewing both of the next presidents of the United States. I'll let you decide when and if that happens between Governor Hutchinson and Governor Moore. But I think you guys are in for a treat. I think these are two people who are extraordinarily worthy of public service, and I think take public service very seriously. So it's a pleasure to be here with you, Governor Hutchinson.
Well, thank you, Chuck. It's nice to be here and not with you on Meet the Press.
Yeah, the camera's on, so but I want to, look, we're going to spend our time on education. We're going to talk about a few other things, too. As you can see, we're live and in person. We don't have to worry about whether we have any tech issues or anything. I had to try something. Too soon? Too soon? I own a Tesla. Let's talk about education. So it was 40 years ago, during the Reagan administration, that we had a Nation at Risk report when it comes to education. Are we still a nation at risk when it comes to our education attainment goals?
Yes. We haven't made the progress that we want to make. We had a setback with the pandemic. We're still challenged with not just the performance of the students, but the support that the students need to have from home and from the community and from parents. So, yes, we're at risk, and we have to consider education as not only essential, but an urgent matter in public policy, both at the state and at the national level. I think we are at risk.
So the easiest education conversation to have these days is saying, hey, we need more computer science. We need to improve STEM in general and bring computer science to the primary and secondary level. This was something you worked on at the NGA. What's the impediment to getting our primary and secondary schools where essentially what I call tech ec, right? We've had a home ec for years when I was a kid, and some of us say, we need tech ec now in some ways. It's not just learning how to program, it's just simply learning how to survive in a digital era.
Well, first of all, it's very doable, and it's critical that we do it. Let's put it in perspective for a second. When I ran for governor in 2014, and I got elected in 2015, at that time, according to code.org and the national studies, only 10% of our high schools in America offered computer science. 10%, 2015.
This is 2014.
2014. Today, it's 51% of our high schools offer it. So in some ways, it's a great success story. And of course, I'm very proud of the fact that in Arkansas, all of our high schools offer computer science. Mm-hmm. You ask about the tech ed, the K through 8 grades, and actually, I think that is much easier in some ways because that's incorporating a lot of varieties of technology and coding in their curriculum and just exposing them to those things, and it's very natural for them. So the challenge is, one, national priority, and then secondly, teachers. Mm-hmm. So Arkansas went from 1,100 students back when we started taking computer science, and this is new to everyone here because now we went from 1,100 students to 23,000 students taking computer science. And in the key part of that was that we had 20 teachers that were certified to teach computer science statewide. Now we have 650. Now we need to look at it from a national perspective. And first of all, I certainly agree that you said computer science is the easy part.
When I say easy, there's some curriculum debates that we're having that have become very polarized politically. I feel like computer science is something that you're not going to have an ideological debate about right now. That's, I guess, where I would come. Easy, maybe administratively it's hard. Yeah. Getting the funding, it's hard. But you're not going to have these political screaming matches.
It's a way you work together in a bipartisan fashion. Absolutely. So very, very good point. But I do want to make that a priority as my campaign, as my initiative as president, to go from 51% of our high schools offering computer science to 100%, and that helps close the divide in our country between rural and urban, because we wanted to make sure when we say every high school that we made sure that the rural schools in Arkansas had the same access, and that makes an incredible difference to our students.
What kind of challenge have you had on rural broadband? Because you got to have rural broadband to be able to teach computer science.
Well, there's bipartisan support, there's a recognition, there's a willingness to do it, it's a high priority. So the battle is more the bureaucracy and getting it done, both the private sector bureaucracy and the government bureaucracy.
I'm going to interrupt here. I remember covering a young gubernatorial candidate in Virginia named Mark Warner, who promised rural broadband. And we've been hearing rural broadband. What is the hurdle? Because we've been talking the talk on rural broadband for over 2 decades.
Well, one, we're making incredible strides in it, and so progress is being made, and the pandemic pointed up the gap, the fact that we hadn't got it done.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, some of our major telecom companies were slow. They didn't want to make the investment. It's in a rural area. They don't have the same return on investment as you have in the urban areas. So, and then in Arkansas, the rural electric cooperatives actually got involved in it, and the competition increased, and we pushed it from a state level. So, they're all participating now. Progress is being made, and we're going to be successful there. As I say, if you got access to high-speed broadband and computer coding, you can run the world from your front porch in Poen, Arkansas. And you might not know where Poen, Arkansas is, but it's a small place.
Does it at least have a good fishing river?
Yeah, yes, they do.
Okay, as long as it's good fishing. It has been interesting. My daughter's in college now. My son's been going through the process. And one of the happier things that I have consumed through this process is the STEM majors are popular. So the point being, about 15, 20 years ago, both Bush and Obama were really pushing, in some ways, the bipartisan push back in the first decade, right, was, hey, we need to improve STEM, we need to improve STEM. And so I think it shows you that, you don't see it immediately, but we created a generation of college applicants that suddenly are more interested in the sciences and the math than they are the liberal arts. In fact, you have some schools starting to shrink. English majors are going away, and they're adding interesting computer science. And we did that because we were losing to the rest of the world on STEM. When you look at what China's doing and some of our global competitors in education, where do you think we lag, and where do we need to catch up?
Well, you look at the reports on science and math. Arkansas ranks behind most of the United States, sorry, ranks behind the Asian countries, including China. And so we're clearly, and it's not just those countries, but it's also some European countries we lag behind. So we do have to concentrate on that, and part of it is higher education. They have done well, they've stepped up their game, but we have to continue to enhance our production of the sciences and the engineers that can help us to compete with China. We have to lead in technology. Right now, AI, we're more advanced than China. They're trying to catch up with us. Quantum computing, we're more advanced than they're trying to catch up. But it is in the the lower end manufacturing of the computers, the chips that we need for our automobiles, that we're dependent upon them, and that's what we need to move back. It all depends upon talent. And you're either going to be importing talent, you're going to grow the talent, or you're going to lose the jobs overseas. And so when it comes to technology, that is the future of our competition with China, and we cannot afford to lose. And that's why this investment is critically important.
Let's talk about, we made a deal at the start of the 20th century to have public education through high school. I thought in my lifetime we'd be at public education through, say, 22. Why do you think we're not there, where we have decided as a society, hey, we're going to offer public education through the first 22 years of your life instead of the first 18 years of your life?
Well, there has been a shift in different ways in different states that have made the two-year college program. You said 22, which would be a four-year college program.
But putting an age limit of some sort.
And so the shift was first to our two-year colleges. We have a program that anybody can get the scholarships that they need, and many states have that capability of funding it through the two-year college program. I think there's two reasons. One is that there's also been a shift to workforce training. In Arkansas, it's a be pro, be proud. And there's really an emphasis today that you don't have to go to college, and you can get a good education and get a good certificate and have a professional career. And so I think there is that dichotomy that is good to have that balance there. And so we didn't move to the taxpayer saying we're going to give you 4 extra years of education. And then secondly, it's a systems matter that we've got higher ed represented in this room. There's competition, there's private sector, there's public sector, and the cost of it. So I think there's a couple different reasons, and the cost of it being a big part of that.
Well, through high school costs a lot of money too. I mean, you just talked about how expensive it is to find teachers, right, to teach computer science. And you got to have teachers who have more degrees than ever in order to teach certain skills, and they're not getting the best salaries. And you're competing with companies that might pay them more.
Well, and that's the reason that we raised teacher pay in Arkansas, and Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders even raised it more additionally. And so there's been a drive to pay our teachers more because, it's a combination of incredible reward and service working with the students, but we still want to pay them well. And we're never going to be able to compete, with the engineers and that or the entrepreneur that's out there. But we have to give them a solid foundation, just like we do our law enforcement officers, and reward their education and the role that they play. But yeah, public education is expensive. Let's focus on that and get it right. And I do believe in choice in education, and I think
I want to ask about that in a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about we haven't made the progress that we wanted to as a nation since, the Nation at Risk report. I think we're poised to actually make a fundamental change in America with the states that are moving toward choice in education, and I think that's an opportunity to help bring in competition, but also incentivize the students and give them the options that they need.
When you go to the choice front, as a parent, we all want choice. There's no doubt. You ask any parent, you're like, please, I want to be able to decide the best school. If you've got means, your list of choices expands. If you know how to navigate a system, like I came in from Dade County. Dade County has charter schools, private schools, magnet schools, and then and if you learn the system, you can find certain ways. The downside of choice is the schools that get left behind. How do we figure out a successful school choice program, which I understand, because again, I get that the parents want this ability, so I understand responding to that. But then you have some parents who don't have a choice. They don't have the ability maybe to take their kid to this other school that they'd like to go to. They're going to go to this public high school, and it's a failing public high school. How do we fix the failing schools for the kids that, frankly, are stuck going there because maybe their parents can't find a way to find another school for them?
Well, I do think some of the challenges that we'll face are parents. I mean, some parents are dedicated. They want to make sure that their children have a choice and they go to the best school. And if transportation is a challenge for them, there's means in which that can be accommodated. And so. But
you're right. It's on the parent.
But yeah,
I mean, it is on the parent to figure that out.
And you have many inner city families in which the parents just want to drop the kids off and get out of there. I mean, they don't. They're not.
I don't think that's just the inner city. I think that's any neighborhood, frankly.
You're
you have
right.
some parents that are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think it's about where you live. Yeah.
Well, you look in rural Arkansas, absolutely. You've got parents that they're lucky if they get up and get the kids to school at all.
Look, some parents view school as daycare. And that is what it is, but what do we do about that failing school?
Well, the failing schools will close. I mean, if you have choice in education and you have a diminishing student enrollment, that school will not survive.
And you're in rural Arkansas, and one of these schools closes. I'm hypothetical here.
And I know
you see where we're going here. Suddenly, I don't have a neighborhood school because it closed down because it failed.
I do think the biggest challenge, though, is our inner city schools on that. The rural schools you look at, they're community-driven. They have more support. It might be the only public school in a small town. And, we need to invest more in the teachers and have a better product there. But they're pretty strong, and they're going to survive, and they're going to compete. The competition is going to allow the schools that can attract students to survive, and others that do not attract students are not going to survive. And I don't know that that's a bad thing for America.
Okay, but what do you do? What do you do for those students that can't get to this other school? If we're going to shut down their failing school because the school failed and enrollment's down, what do you do with those? There's still a group, there's still a community that suddenly lost a public school.
Well, there's going to be avenues for the community to bring in a charter school, to bring in the public school system is not going to let a community not have access to education. And so there's going to be that access. There's a commitment there. And so both the public school environment and the competition that might come from a public charter school or from a private school is going to provide that avenue of education for the children. I think the greater challenge is incentivizing parents and giving them the support that they need to make sure that those children have access to that. And that's a bigger community effort, nonprofit effort, and sometimes a government effort, but don't forget the incredible role that the mentors and the, in Arkansas, we've got some great support organizations that help those families and help those students that don't have the support systems that they need.
There's a lot of issues within the school system these days when it comes to school safety and mental health. Some of it has to do with fear of shootings. Some of it has to do with social media stuff. We don't have enough resource officers, whether it's to deal with security or deal with mental health challenges. Where do we find that money? And we need there's sometimes one school counselor for every 800 kids. Is that something we can survive doing?
Well, we can address it. For example, everyone probably knows that school counselors got given a lot of administrative work to do. And so they were doing other responsibilities other than doing direct counseling. And so we recognized that problem, and so we passed a law and required 90% of a school counselor's time has to be spent in direct counseling. And so that's a benefit. Whenever you're looking at school resource officers that are critically important, that's a combination of support from the city, the county, law enforcement, and the schools. And you're right, some cannot afford that. And so we supplemented. One, we put out security grants to help them from the state level. We increased the funding for security. And we allowed commissioned school officers that are not law enforcement, but if you've got a volunteer that is might be working as a mechanic in the school, or might be working as a teacher, or might be working in some other capacity, or assistant principal, they can actually go through the training and provide protection.
But you create a mandatory state training program for these folks?
Well, if they want to carry a firearm in the school, they have to be trained, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mandatory training.
Are you at all concerned about too many guns in school?
I don't think that's as long as it's not students carrying the guns into school.
No, I understand that, but the fear of you put somebody armed, they may, then.
It hasn't been our experience. That hasn't been our experience. And of course, that's why you have a significant training requirement in that. But the goal is to keep students safe. And it has to be both structurally with the architecture of the school, as well as the training and response time, the coordination with law enforcement.
Do you think this is something we may wish we could go back to the days where you didn't need this, but do you think every school should have armed security?
I do indeed. That was the report that I made with the National School Shield Initiative. Every school should have the access to armed protection.
It's a very expensive, that's yet even more money,
Well,
potentially.
it is, and we're devoting to it. I mean, I don't know any school district that's not moving in that direction and paying for it.
We got about 5 or 6 minutes left. We did a lot on education. I'm going to do a few political questions because I think they're kind of curious. but they're light. What's the number one thing that harms our politics today?
I'll give you the answer. It's a serious answer. In times of trouble in our country, times of division, which we've always gone through, we've had leaders that tried to breach that division and trying to heal that division. Today is just the opposite. We have leaders that capitalize on the division in America. And so the biggest challenge that we have in our body politic is that we don't have leaders that try to heal the divide. And I'm not talking about just between Republicans and Democrats. I'm just talking about our nation as a whole in whether you're talking about our school systems or a whole host of other issues. We have to have leaders that will try to bring people together. I read Beyond Peace by Richard Nixon. Sorry, I went to another presidential library at one point. But in that, it talked of this one story where he was at the White House, and in early morning, during the protests, and the Vietnam protesters were out at the Lincoln Memorial. And so President Nixon went out there before dawn and met with him and talked to him. Now, he's trying to understand the divide. That is leadership to me, first by listening and understanding, and then trying to think how you heal our land. So to me, it's a matter of leadership.
One little factoid I like to point out is you take the four most bipartisan members of the Senate, and Murkowski, Romney, Manchin, Sinema. They're all more unpopular in the party they either belong to or once belonged to than they are with the other party. What does that tell you? What's wrong with our politics? Anyway, you don't have to comment on that. You concerned that this Republican primary field's getting too big, that this looks like 2016 again?
Well, I was expecting 8 or 9, and I think that's a reasonable number. It might be 1 or 2 larger than that. I do believe that they will get on one debate stage.
We won't have 2 debates? We don't believe in junior debates at NBC. We believe in equalizing it for what it's worth.
And particularly,
you think we can do it in one night?
Particularly if one of the participants don't show up, we'll have more room on the platform.
And probably more talk time. You have gotten incredible laudatory comments from so many conservative commentators after you ran, but they all had the but. Oh my God, he's got all the experience she needs. But he'd been a better candidate in 2012. Or this makes sense on Earth too. Or in the before times, Asa Hutchinson is the front runner. The implication being Trump has changed everything. Are you concerned that you're running to lead a party that doesn't exist? The version that you're wanting to lead.
That's a fair question, but I would rephrase it that I'm running to make sure the party is one that Ronald Reagan would be proud of. And unless you have leaders that believe in the principles of conservatism and the ability to solve problems for America, then just give up. And that I always get a kick out of the questions that are asked are fine, but it's like, you're a supremely qualified candidate, but Trump is running so high in the polls, and I say, what do you want to do? Just coronate him, or do you want to have a competition? I mean, there's a reason you run for office and try to change that. You run for office because you want to change the dynamics of a race or a country or your party. And if you don't engage in that fight, then you'll never change.
Trying to decide, do I let him leave wanting more, or do I go? I know he wants to. Let me. If you're not the nominee, is there a way this campaign is successful in another way?
Well, I think it's already been successful. It's successful in changing the debate, causing people to think, raising issues that they had not been raised before. And that doesn't imply, well, I've accomplished something, so I'm happy to bow out. No, I think, and that's why I've always said it's fine for multiple candidates to be in there because they all have a unique message. Tim Scott, he's got a story I can't tell. I think he's important for America. Nikki Haley the same way. I have a unique story, and I love telling that story, and I think it's important for America. So I think at this stage of the campaign, the multiple candidates is fine. Obviously, it's going to narrow, but don't pressure us to narrow it too quickly. We've got to be in this thing through Iowa, New Hampshire.
I got a lot of booking I need to do. I want more candidates. Yeah. We're pro candidate at Meet the Press. I think all the Sunday shows. I can speak for all the Sunday shows on that one.
We do need a few town hall meetings, so book me up.
Actually, I'm going to do the last question because I think Governor Moore because it's something he's worked on, and I'm guessing it's something that a previous Arkansas governor once championed, and that's national service. You talked about bridging the rural and urban divide. I think the biggest problem we have in America is our geographical divide. I think it is our polarization and our geographical divide is sadly one and the same. I worry. I think national service, I think the military is one of the few places where a kid from urban America and a kid from rural America are in the same bunk, right? They're sharing a bunk. It knits us back together. He's got a program for national service for basically a service program in Maryland in exchange for scholarship money type of thing. Others have called Democrat and Republican mandatory national service, not a draft. You could teach, you could do all sorts of things. What do you think of that? And do you think that could be an answer to our divide? One of the answers.
We need to do that. I'm not sure that a mandate and requirement, it's like reinstating.
I knew the conservative in you, mandates and conservatives, and I get that. I respect that.
You also have to deal with the public will. I don't know that would be supported broadly publicly, but what is important to me is whether it is incentivized, and for example, if you're looking at student loan debt, if somebody wants to have their debt forgiven, let them go into some type of public service.
I've wondered why I haven't seen more people offer that up as sort of a compromise proposal here.
Yeah, it should be a targeted type of approach. But also, hearken back to President Kennedy's language, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It just has to be instilled in our civic education into the heart of America that we are a community together. And our founding fathers designed this country that we have individual rights that we all bind together to function as a nation. And we all give something. And we have to have leaders that are not hesitant to ask for things from America to give to our great country.
Governor Hutchinson, thank you so much.